These are Ruminations from Among the Bards. I am Christopher Lewis. This episode is on the enduring value of story. What I have always felt about the value of books and story since I was a child is that a book is a magical vehicle of secrets, that one could approach a tale or a book with hope of learning something essential and somehow becoming better for reading each book. As a young adult, I became aware of the literary tradition of Western civilization, the inheritance of thought that is the foundation of the Western worldview. And so I pursued a liberal arts education with increasing thirst and continued that pursuit all my life. I have not been disappointed. This classical approach to learning, which I very much value, is extremely idealistic, and it was something that was formed of an idealistic philosophy that was still intact when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s. But even in that time, I was confronted with the fact that higher education was now funded by the sciences, and so we were being forced more and more towards a view that a liberal education is no longer practical. I, of course, disagree profoundly, and have also been somewhat disappointed that university education has been forced into a business model that makes it so increasingly unaffordable to most people. Nevertheless, I feel that a liberal education is necessary for our time. And my belief in the value of story assumes that a writer has a responsibility towards his readers to guide them towards true humanity. I feel that a writer or a storyteller is a sort of a priest, administering to the mind and heart and revealing something about the mystery of the human condition. Story has this function. This is an idealistic view, but it's no less true. Nevertheless, stories have to engage with human struggle, sufferings, and trials. This book is an example. This is The Dream of the Red Chamber, a Chinese classic. It was written in the 1700s. It's the story of a Confucian scholar framed in a Taoist, Buddhist, and Confucianist context, as only the Chinese can do, and his very human struggles and failings. The classic model of the purpose of literature was explained long ago by Aristotle. He said that the purpose of tragedy and comedy is to bring the reader, or the audience in his case, to a catharsis. This catharsis is a limit of self-understanding. It comes about through the interaction of the main character with the characters around him, how he understands himself, how others see and understand him. The catharsis of comedy results in a good thing. There is reconciliation with society, usually through marriage. The catharsis of a tragedy brings the hero to an alienation from society because he has exceeded the limits allowed to man from the gods. This catharsis is always painful, always reveals something that was not seen before, and so is always revelatory in an important way. So, there is a lot of pain in contemporary life. Some of it is very deep. Many authors concentrate on revealing that pain and exposing what they feel is the helplessness of our condition. I think of Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle, where the main character at the very end is frozen in place by the ice nine that's taken over the world. He chooses to be frozen in place, standing on top of a hill, with his middle finger thrust towards the sky, as to say, "This is for you, God." The fact that there is so much story of this kind in the modern world reveals a deep wound. In my view, any responsible thinker and any writer needs to find a response to this. And this requires a search, unless one really believes that helplessness is necessary to contemporary life. This book, The Ethics of Beauty, was written by a theological professor at St. Tikhon's Orthodox Seminary, Timothy Patterson. This book is about the expression of beauty in art and actually the encounter with beauty that inspires good art. It's actually a book about healing from trauma. And he feels that it is beauty, a real encounter with beauty, and of course here he's talking about a powerful encounter of something divine, that is the only thing that will really heal the human soul. Now, he gives a very interesting synopsis of the Iliad. He feels that the Iliad was written to help veterans of Bronze Age wars to heal. This is one of the reasons that the book is, of course, so graphic in its violence, but that's not really what it's about. It's about the reason for that violence. And he points out that the Iliad begins not with the abduction of Helen, but actually this story begins with the abduction of a girl who was the daughter of a priest of Apollo. And she becomes the captive of Agamemnon, the king of the Greeks. Well, the priest of Apollo comes to the Greek camp begging for her to be ransomed. He says he'll bring all of the gold they want, just give him his daughter back. And the Greeks say to Agamemnon, look, this is the priest of Apollo. You'd better do that. Agamemnon refuses. The priest prays to Apollo, and Apollo sends a terrible plague on the Greek camp, so that everybody realizes Agamemnon has done something wrong, and he too is forced to realize he has to give this girl back. It's the only way that the plague is going to stop. Otherwise, the army is lost. But he doesn't give the girl back until the next most powerful man in the camp, the great hero Achilles, gives Agamemnon Achilles' favorite captive girl. And this causes great anger by Achilles. And as the story says, it is Achilles' anger that drives so many men into the undergloom. Actually, what is happening here is that things get worse and worse through the Iliad because of a violation of the sacred. And this is something that the hearers of this story understood. This is the point, and it brings up an intuition that we have that warfare is in some way always a violation of the sacred. Even in just wars, there is something deeply terrible that is violated. And this is why we have so much trauma among veterans. They're the ones who really show us what is wrong in our society. So this is the purpose of this book, The Ethics of Beauty, to say that the purpose of art is to find beauty and in that way to heal. In the Iliad and the Odyssey, what we see is the classic catharsis that Aristotle described. It's a condition in which the gods themselves are at war. And through this terrible condition, Odysseus has to find his way home through a hostile universe. And then he has to confront an impossible situation in his own home. He is faced there by the heroics of his wife Penelope, and there is, at the end, a strong sense of justice, though there is still violence, but there is also the guidance of Athena, who is wisdom. So the purpose of story is the same that it's always been. The writer or the storyteller has to examine the trials of our human condition and invoke the divine for help. There needs to be a belief in the divine. Using the language of Greek philosophers and story masters, we have to allow the gods, as it were, to lift us up so that we can peer under the veil of the history of the troubled human condition. Often it is catharsis that brings mortals into the presence of the gods, to perceive the revelation that's able to heal wounds. The Indian epic, the Mahabharata, this is one of the world's great epics, perhaps the greatest. It describes the cause of an immense war, so tragic that it puts an end to one of the first ages of the world. It has so many stories within stories, so skillfully told and woven together into a whole, that it is said that the entire Vedic tradition is to be found within the Mahabharata. Now, to read this, you have to submit your imagination to the vastness of the Hindu cosmos, and it is breathtaking. Now, I'm not asking people to endorse the Hindu pantheon any more than I would endorse the Greek pantheon while reading Homer. The name Athena, according to Plato, means the mind of God, the nous of Theos, Athena. The Greeks had a sense of divine theophany before they encountered Orthodox theology, and you see it in Homer when Athena appears, when she speaks to Telemachus, the son of Odysseus, when she inspires his heart, and then she disappears in glory. This is a glimpse of theosis. So I am not encouraging one to worship the Hindu gods. I've read the Gurus, the Young Man and Elder Paisios. It is a stark unveiling of the nature of Hindu spirituality, at least as it is now. And it's actually shocking how violently it's unveiled. And I think it takes a spiritual master like Elder Paisios of Mount Athos to make this clear. So that's not what I'm inviting you to do, but I am inviting reading this great epic if it's something you've never considered. When long ago the sage Vyasa had understood the story and was ready to recite the whole Mahabharata, it was the elephant god Ganesha, the scribe, who wanted to write it down. And so Vyasa said to him, "Look, this is going to take a while. You're going to be writing for a long time, days, maybe weeks. But once you start writing, you can't stop, because once I start reciting, I won't be able to stop. So you have to keep going." Well, Ganesha agrees. He has 4 arms and a trunk. He can use them all to hold a pen. He agrees. But when his last pen breaks, what's he going to do? So he tore off his own tusk and dipped it in his blood and kept on writing. If you've ever wondered why the elephant god Ganesha is always shown with a broken tusk, usually with the end of it in his trunk, that's why. You have to love that. And if there's anything else that you would expect from an epic, you'll find it in the Mahabharata. Storytelling of this kind is becoming a lost art because humanity is becoming a lost art. We no longer know who we are as a people. We don't understand our own origin. We don't have a proper orientation towards the meaning of personal existence. We don't really understand the direction for personal and spiritual mastery, or even know what that looks like. It is important, therefore, to make an effort to recover the old tales and to see what's there. You know, fairy and folk tales, they most often contain elements of ancient mythology. We see deep in the wilderness of fairy tales that we encounter a path. The path is there. It's discovered. It was not made by the one who encounters it. It's already there. It was laid out by those who had gone before. If there is no path, one has to be found, scattering breadcrumbs through the forest or unwinding the thread of Ariadne to find one's way back out of the labyrinth. Even then, this direction is something that was suggested by the divine. We have to find these paths. We have to find out what its markers and signposts mean, and what is the direction to take. The storyteller has to become a seer in the prophetic sense. He has to be able to perceive divine directions, without which the human condition is meaningless. And this might have to come through sacrifice and cathartic revelation. We have to have a sense of the divine and make contact with it. It is my conviction that a storyteller needs to invoke meaning and understanding. And if he invokes meaning and understanding, he will find it. How do we do that? What is the mystery of our human existence? This is the question that has to be confronted for storytelling to receive the divine fire that makes it an art worth pursuing. I am Christopher Lewis, poet and author. I ask you to check out my books at Anaphora Press and on Amazon, and my writer's blog at Orthodox Illumination on WordPress.